Cults, abuse, semi-cults, and semi-abuse. Ooh, challenging topics, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, don't forget to hit subscribe and hit the notification bell if you want to be updated on more video advice. Also, don't forget to check out my positive, uplifting advice on Instagram at Leah H. Chantal. Or if you want a more private group, definitely check out Leah's self-love group on Facebook. And Facebook. But anyway, I'm gonna tackle a challenging topic today, and it's cults, abuse, and then semi-cults and semi-abuse. And the latter is a lot more common and a lot more tricky to deal with, in my opinion, because sometimes they act sweet and nice, and then other times they're quite nasty, and you have to figure out how to set boundaries with those particular groups. So, okay, first we're gonna start with cults and abusive people. So when you're in an abusive group or you're in an abusive relationship with somebody, so a cult might be something like the Church of Scientology. An example of an abusive relationship might be incest. And I've encountered a couple of people who are women who experience incest from their fathers. Thankfully, definitely not the case in my family, but I'm just saying it's out there. And so there is one positive aspect to encountering such high negativity in your life, and that is it's very obvious what you need to do. You need to cut these people out of your life. It's just very straightforward what the right thing to do is. And that's the one positive I can get out of these negative situations, is that basically you just need people to help you cut these ties loose. And sometimes the people who would help you the most are not necessarily therapists or psychologists, although I'm not saying they don't have a place or a part they can play to help you. But you actually want to remove yourself from those situations. I'd argue that that's the most important thing, more than the therapy. You want to get out of the household with the abusive person, or you want to get out of the group that's abusive, and make sure you have very strong boundaries and you stay very far away from those people and those groups. Okay, so that's part one. Simple enough. But now we're going to get into part two. This is where things get really tricky, because some groups will behave like negatively some of the time. So I'm not going to name the group I'm thinking of, but actually it's really, really common, even in religious groups, where, for example, they don't treat homosexual people correctly. They don't give them the human rights that they deserve, right? And so when you encounter a group like that, maybe they're really nice and they do things right, maybe 95% of the time. And then they have this really tricky issue that they haven't dealt with properly. And that's what I would call semi-abusive or semi-cult-like, where they're trying to get you to buy into this power structure to support them in treating gay people improperly or something like that. And I won't mention who, because there's quite a lot of mainstream groups who will do these kinds of things to gay people. But yeah, it's just an example where they're not being treated properly, and so you need to set boundaries. But maybe it's your religion of birth that's doing that, and you can't just necessarily excommunicate yourself, although there's some people who do turn atheists and do that kind of thing because they're so upset by this kind of activity. But maybe that's not a good option for you. Maybe you feel comfortable enough that you want to keep in touch and go once in a while, but you just don't want to get too involved in their politics because you are aware of some negative things that they're doing. So I'm going to give the example of like going to church like once or twice a year. Sometimes that's a really positive way to set boundaries and say that this particular behavior isn't correct. The way that they're dealing with this situation isn't correct, but I'm not going to completely cut ties and say that they're all bad. I'm just going to set some boundaries and show up once in a while, but I'm not going to get too involved. I think that's a really positive, healthy way to deal with these sorts of situations. And you can do similar things with family members. If you have family members who occasionally behave in toxic ways, but you don't necessarily want to like cut the relationship off completely, what you can do is just have a phone call a few times a year with that family member, right? And prepare yourself for that phone call. Be aware that they're probably going to be negative and say negative things. And just mentally prepare yourself for that, and then engage in the conversation a few times a year. And then don't talk to them. Don't visit them in person, and don't engage with that person the rest of the year. Keep your boundaries strong and stay away from them. But I think that's really healthy, especially when it comes to like a parent and child relationship. If incest is involved, then obviously that's a very negative issue, and I think that's grounds that you can cut them out of your life completely if you want to. However, if it's more something like subtle, like your parents like, I don't believe in you, or they were a little bit emotionally abusive, but they didn't physically hit you or do anything too bad, then maybe the right thing to do is to keep in touch, but just keep in touch from a little bit of distance and keep some strong boundaries in there to protect yourself and to keep your self-love bubble and not let their negativity into your life too much. I hope that made sense, and I hope you really enjoyed this video. If you like this video, please press like, and don't forget to subscribe for more video tips. I'm really happy to share these sorts of topics with you. They're really close to my heart, and I hope to talk to you and hear from you soon. Oh, and if you want to comment and tell me like your ways of setting boundaries, if you have a semi-abusive relationship, but it's more like subtle with a family member, but you don't want to cut them out completely, what are your ways of handling it? I'd be really curious to know how you set boundaries and how you deal with it. Okay, I hope you're all having a wonderful day, and take care. Bye now.